are following. Oh, great. Okay, we are recording. Thank you. We're following the same format that we have in past years. It seems to work well. And so we start with a letter from Craig and Craig that kind of highlights some of the projects that were completed this past year. And I think also is a good reminder, it touches on the Riverfront Festival that we hosted at the downtown Riverfront Park for the World Athletic Championships. That was a really big lift for us, and it was really great to be able to showcase that park during that time. So I was glad to see that kind of highlighted. In general, we talked about the projects that were completed this year, which includes the renovation of Berkeley Park. As I said before, downtown Riverfront Park, new development. We replaced the lighting at Monroe Park. We have substantial completion of Sheldon Pool and Fitness Center. And then trail restroom enclosures, which we also call porta potty cozies, which is just a way to kind of dress up a porta potty and make it look a little bit better and protect it a little bit too. One of the things we wanted to touch on this year, just kind of as a trend or a challenge that we're seeing, is the continuing rapid inflation, particularly related to project construction. So this is really kind of impacting the bond measure. And so we're just seeing prices really skyrockets, and it is giving us some challenges to complete our projects as planned. But I think the piece of good news there is that we're also really leaning in hard on the leveraging of resources. And so we were actually in the last year able to get an additional $5 million, which is really going to help these projects. We will continue to have challenges, but we will continue to look for more money. So I think that's kind of the message that we want to say there, that this is a challenge and this is how we're aiming to address that. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about where that $5 million all came from in a little bit here. We always start with actually, having the resolution and the bond text in there. So we remember what we have promised. And then this is our progress chart, which has been in each project. And we just have more shading and more completed project check marks. I think last year we were at 75% of projects were either completed or underway. And this year it's 80%. So a little bit more there. And a lot of those projects have kind of moved along. So we continue to make progress really in all of these different categories. And maybe when we're done here, we can give some of the updates on some of those individual projects. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll skip updates for now, but we continue to just kind of build on a quick summary of each one of the projects that are in these different phases of development, either complete with construction underway, construction coming soon, or still kind of in the planning process. And then we talk a little bit more about our ongoing habitat restoration projects, which are a little bit more iterative in process. We spend a little bit of money each year, and that's the most effective way really to get at controlling some of those invasive species that we're battling with this funding, and making really good progress. So then the leveraging bond funds is just a summary of the grants that we applied for and received this year. The $1.2 million grant for Suzanne Arley Park was a really competitive grant process. We applied to the U.S. Department of Commerce for that, and we feel really good about it. And that is ARPA funds, but it just, there is access to ARPA funds through a variety of different kind of portals. And so that one was going directly to the Department of Commerce. Then there was another bundle of funds that kind of came to the city of Eugene, and we asked, and so the city council had discretion over how to spend those dollars. And so we asked for and received $3.3 million of those funds to go directly to bond funded projects. That includes Stryker Field, Maddie Reynolds, Martin Luther King, Train Song, and West Bank Park. We also have funds for Scobert Park from that too, but since that isn't a bond project, I didn't include it there. And then we also applied for over $500,000 to Oregon State Parks, their local government grant program, which is a continual funding stream that we often do apply for funds from. And we received that, and that is for Santa Clara Community Park, which begins construction this summer. So good timing on that one. So all told, that's over $5 million in new revenue that we were able to get this year. And that adds on to some of the previous partnerships and grants. And then we also wanted to touch base on our partnership with Eugene Parks Foundation with the capital campaign that EPF has launched for various projects throughout Eugene neighborhoods, several of which are bond projects as well. And so just wanted to touch on that. That includes spray play at Santa Clara Community Park and exercise stations at Maddie Reynolds and Golden Gardens Park. So, but those are just 3 projects. The work of that capital campaign is actually much, much bigger than that. But I just wanted to touch on where that overlap was.
Hey, Carolyn,
yes.
Somebody just said your name. I don't know if someone had a question.
It was Scott.
Yes.
Just kind of a clarification on the leveraging the bond funds. I know when the proposal went out for the original, bond, there were some expectations of, hey, we're going to leverage this because we're going to go out and get additional funds, grants, that type of stuff. And I know you've mentioned a lot of stuff here. Just curious where, you guys have any indication of what the original plan called for in terms of leveraging and kind of where we're at now?
Well,
have we got more or less, about the same as what we projected?
That's a great question. When we originally went out, we talked about all that we really counted on was SDC funds, so system development charges, as a additional funding source that we have control over, that we would combine with bond funds to do a lot of these projects. And that continues to be the case and a very important funding source for us. We also talked about partnership funding in that we knew that the school districts were going to work with us on the turf field renovations. And I think we said that we would also be looking for grant dollars, but we never specified an amount.
Okay.
And so I would say that puts us above where we thought we would be if we want to look optimistically.
So does that, I'm assuming costs have come in higher just with inflation. So maybe that's help make up that gap, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's Scott, that was one thing I started with in kind of the summary of where we are today, is that we are really seeing costs, our construction contracts come in much higher than we had anticipated. And so it is a challenge. Thankfully, we do have SDCs. Thankfully, we've been successful with some of these grants, but this is going to continue to be the story. We're going to have to keep looking for more money. But to date, we have not had to scale back any of our projects. So we feel good about that. And that is our goal moving forward.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so here's the money, kind of accounting portion of the report. And as in past years, we look at our bond expenses by category, over on this first page, just kind of breaking it down by materials and supplies, contractual services, personnel, construction, utilities, and then bond issuance costs. And actually this chart then shows what we have spent to date. And as you can see, we've really spent a fair amount of the bond, over $26 million, and we have about 13 million remaining. And I think that something to point out about this graph is that a lot of the projects we've done to date are the really high dollar projects. So the recreation centers, so Campbell and Sheldon and Echo Hollow, the pools, those were all big dollar items. And so even though we still have a number of projects left, it's those really large expensive ones that are completed. And so you can see that we have spent a lot of the money to date. And then this next page breaks it out by project. And this is cumulative. So with every new spending, with every new project we undertake, we add it to the list and we show our expenses up until this fiscal year, and then specific to this fiscal year, and then spending to date.
Carolyn, Whitney has a question in the chat.
Oh, yes. I can't see my chat since I'm sharing my screen. So can you read it for me, Kelly?
Yeah, sure. She says, wonderful summary as always. The explanation of complementary funding is terrific. Something to consider adding to the narrative with 20% of projects still undone. How well does the project load match up with remaining bond funds for the last year? Is money tracking well? Is there potentially a shortfall? You can say that bit in the report about high dollar projects front loaded.
Yeah.
Good point.
It is so to answer your question, Whitney, the bond dollars are tracking because we tend to, when we are struggling to make up a gap in our budgets, we tend to look at other funding sources. So we're making that up more so by pulling in more SDCs or looking for grant dollars than taking bond dollars from another project. And so generally I would say that you know, if you're just looking at the bond dollars, we're tracking. But thanks for that comment. And I think that we can kind of expand on that a little bit more. So I think that brings us to the levy report, and I can continue to share my screen if Kelly and Chris want to jump in.
Chris, do you want to start?
Kelly, do you want to start with the survey?
Sure. Do you want to get to that page? It's
Yes.
Sure.
a little
And
bit
then-
further down. Yeah, so as you may know, every year we are doing a survey. We work with the Terrell Group and they have a survey expert, and every year we're doing a survey to kind of see, are people noticing the changes from the levy? What are they wanting the most from the levy, et cetera, as well as their feelings of safety. And so we did it again this last summer, and we had about 1,200, a little over 1,200 people participate. And again, as with past surveys, we're just really hearing this real love for parks and natural areas, and 89% of respondents indicated that parks are extremely or very important to their quality of life. And 75% are at parks daily or weekly. And so we saw a lot of love for parks during the survey part. And then we did see again that people are noticing those changes. They're noticing that the garbage is getting picked up. They're noticing that landscaping is looking good and lawns are mowed. And their priorities for parks, is consistent, ongoing, and that is really around maintenance and cleaning up homeless camps, and improving park safety and security. And as far as feelings of safety, people are feeling safe, but the thing that makes them feel the least safe is when there is camping and other illicit activity and garbage related to camping. So that's what we found out in the survey this year, similar to last year's and similar to other just citywide public surveys about what the community is really paying most attention to and is concerned about.
All right, thank you. So if we can roll back up a little bit. So the levy report identifies the amount of funding that was spent for the levy for the various categories, and I'm not going to go into that. But once again, our materials and supplies and personal expenses were our largest expenses, and those were, somewhat front-loaded as well, as we had to hire staff to get them up to speed to maintain things. We have the Riverfront Park system that has come online, and future parks that will be coming online quickly will be Stryker Field. And so the levy will be used to maintain that park as well. And then you take a look at just the budget plan and things like that that are listed, the amount of money that was spent and the totals. Once again, it's materials and supplies and personal expenses that are the bulk of that, as well as utilities. We actually spend a portion of our levy funding on utilities, which are increased turf maintenance and things like that with the new parks that we have out. So any questions on the expenditures while we're here? Okay, let's roll down a little bit.
I think I go up.
Okay, so the levy is really about, on the maintenance side of it, is ongoing promises that we promised the community, and we've done that. We've kept our restrooms open that we said we would. We've hired additional staff to provide additional route service, which is restroom maintenance, garbage pickup, and inspection of the park system, basically opening the park and keeping our parks safe and clean. That's really important, and that was reflected in the survey. And then you can see the list of things that are included in park maintenance, and the community has recognized that, so the levy's made a big difference. And so with that, trails and natural area maintenance has also been important. We now provide garbage service multiple times a week at our popular trailheads, and in the past that was not something that we would have gotten to very often without the levy. And it's also been recognized by the community. And then just the maintenance of fences and signs and things like that in those same areas has made a significant impact. So, and Kelly, do you want to talk about park safety or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for the park safety side, we still have our 2 full-time park ambassadors that are funded through the levy. We have our 2 full-time Eugene Police Park Resource Officers. We have our illicit activity team that does a lot of the cleanup of the illicit activity, particularly on our waterways. Our waterways really get hit the hardest. We work with the sheriff's work crew to help us out. And then we have the Guardian trailers. We now have 2 Guardian trailers. We kind of did a switch with EPD. So we have 2 Guardian trailers that our trucks can move to different locations. And they're really, really effective at, keeping an eye on hot spots, and just, people really clamor for them, and they really do tend to settle down a lot of illicit activity. And, they're staying very busy. It feels like what I'm hearing is just, we really are at this place right now where are able to address things like camping before it becomes established. We're able to have conversations with people right when they're ready to settle down and get them that social service information before they even get started with camping in parks and natural areas. So that's made a huge difference, and it's cut down on the volume of cleanup and the volume of complaints a bit. And we do, really check our social services every day. We look for the available bed count every day, and we try to share that up-to-date information with everybody we come across, and just do it as humanely as possible. And yeah, I would say there's still a lot of pressure. There's still a lot of hot spots, especially particularly in the downtown area, and just a lot of pressure on those park ambassadors and that whole team to address issues quickly. Raina has a question.
Yeah, I was just, can everyone hear me? Okay. My one recommendation would be, because this is such a positive report, the last page with feelings of safety vary, and there's still some negative emotions there. If you would perhaps swap that with the levy changes noticed section, just so again, you're ending on a more positive, like, even though these things are still not all resolved, people are noticing the changes, and we're still working towards some, but I think to have you end on that note just misses it a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that's all for me.
Okay, that's all for me as well. Thank you.
Any other comments or suggestions or questions about the report?
Carolyn, I have just one thing to add informationally, that the advisory board, did you flash back to page 23 just briefly on the levy spending? You'll notice there's a recreation maintenance column, and the levy spending there is based on maintenance associated with the new renovations. We also planned in the levy to spend some funding on operations within recreation if some of those facilities were done, but we haven't been able to actually tap into the levy funding because during this year 4, we are still dealing with the pandemic, and we're still having trouble with staffing. So what was originally listed in the levy spending was some operational for recreation, but we did not tap into it. We didn't need to tap into it because of the conditions of our service area. So that's just a little FYI for the advisory board. That will be pretty similar in year 5 too. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig.
Carolyn, do you want to transition over to levy update?
Sure will.
All right.
Actually, before we do that, Craig, as in past years, I've kind of taken a shot at drafting the cover letter that is signed by the advisory group. But I always ask for any themes that you might want me to cover. And so in last year's letter, we basically started by talking about the accomplishments, and then we talked about some of the kind of innovations that we had done as a result of some of the pandemic challenges. I might suggest that at least one of the themes this year be about the inflationary challenges and how we have found some additional leveraged funds this year. Might be one talking point, but I would like to hear from you all what you would like me to focus on with that letter.
Kind of to Raina's point earlier.
Yeah.
So her point is just being, focusing on the positive. I think the inflation is a problem, but I think you're presenting it with what we also found a solution, right? We went out and found additional dollars. So
Yeah,
to leverage our money, just a positive approach to it.
Yeah, to dovetail on to Scott, I think that's great. Just, I mean, I think it's important for the challenges to be put out there openly. And then, you know, what start out with something positive, talk about the challenges, and end, as Raina suggested, again on comments and the feedback. I think that is so important because after all, right, this is the community voted for the bond and the levy, and the community appears to be happy with the outcome. So to me, that's a mission accomplished statement.
the sandwich approach.
The sandwich approach, and I was avoiding saying it because I figured everyone knew what it was, right? And I think your letters are great. So when you send them out, you usually do that anyway.
Okay,
There's another comment in the chat from Whitney.
okay.
Trying to represent Whitney here. She says, I think my comments can be addressed in our cover letter. Does this group want to plant biased seeds about future funding plans, ideas, issues? And I always encourage more narrative storytelling than simply a report. Robust Parks and Rec leads to community health and wellness, vibrant inclusion. Let's not leave momentum behind when the current bond expires.
That's nice.
I was also going to say something. I don't know if you would put it in the, I know both Craigs referenced the downtown riverfront park, but I think if there's a way for us to showcase how, because of this work, we are now being looked at in a certain way, whether that's other Parks and Rec are now looking at what we're doing with our bond or with how we've done certain things. And now we're best in practice because of what we've been able to do. I think that just kind of cements the feeling of it with citizens being happy, but then also others outside of our region or city also seeing the impact of the work and wanting to adopt it as well. So I think that if there's any, agencies that have reached out and been like, how did you all do this? Or how was this done? I think that's a perfect opportunity to also go into, because we're now best in practice, or we've done this really well, we've set ourselves up for even greater and better things in the future.
Great idea. And actually Downtown Riverfront Park has won a couple awards. So it would be great to mention that here. Thanks for the reminder.
Carolyn, did you provide a timeline on that cover letter?
No.
Okay, we probably should talk about that because it does dovetail into this next conversation around the levy renewal conversation with council. We'd like to try to get this report in front of council as soon as possible, because they are in the middle of talking about levy renewal. And if they do put a measure forward to the ballot, we're basically not able to talk about this as easily as we might be beforehand. So probably expect a draft cover letter to folks soon. And then we'll try to get that to Sarah and get that in front of council as quickly as possible.
Okay, so look for a draft this week. And maybe Craig, how soon is the turnaround? Like by end of next week?
Matt and Ben, I mean, I would like to try to get it, if we're going to council January 23rd, possibly, I would like to try to get it in their hands before that date.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I see their heads nodding. So, transition. Are we set to transition to the levy renewal discussion with council then? Okay.
Yes,
So,
please. Take it away.
Craig Smith and I were in front of council last night. Matt was there as well, and Twyla, our finance director, was there to answer questions. But we did start a series of conversations with council back in October 19th at a work session. I believe we spoke with this group prior to that about the scenarios that we were going to be presenting to them, which essentially are three. One, maintain the status quo, maintain the levy at the current rate, maintain the services at the current options or programs. However, as Carolyn was mentioning and others, we have this inflationary increase. So really our dollars don't go as far, and that equates to a service level reduction. So that was option one. Option two was to increase the levy, include some additional maintenance and operations staff, include an additional park ambassador, include some additional recreation facilities and program personnel. The dollar amount, I don't have that right in front of me. I think it was around 5.2 million. Does that sound right, Craig? And then the third option was essentially a safety enhancement option where we included two additional Eugene police officers, park resource officers is what we call them, as well as two additional park ambassadors. And that's what we presented to them. It was an FYI to council. Council asked that we go out and do some polling, some survey work. We had a consultant, DHM, do that work after the November election. And we knew that prior to that, that was not going to be a good time to be surveying folks. So pretty quickly after the last election, we went out and surveyed. The results came back. They did the presentation on those results last night. I would encourage you all to watch that. It is interesting. But essentially, folks were most interested in kind of being at a dollar amount near where we are right now, but they were also very interested in the enhanced safety option. So, you know, as you all have probably heard with other surveys, including our community-wide survey late summer, early fall, I mean, the unhoused issue in our community is pretty much number one. And the work that we're doing in parks on that has been very, very critical and important to that. And folks want to see that continue, and they wouldn't mind seeing that work enhanced. I think we were still left in a bit of a quandary around, okay, well, where is the sweet spot in terms of you really want to stick closer to the dollar amount you're paying for right now. You're interested in some enhancement options, but we're not exactly sure where to land in terms of what those services would be and what the costs are. And so staff is continuing to have conversations and probably bringing back some recommendations to council January 23rd. And so, Craig, I don't know if you have anything more to add, or Matt or Ben, from what you saw yesterday and where you feel like we are, but we're sort of 2/3 through our conversations with council in the hopes to get to a passing of a resolution to put a measure on the ballot in May, and we have to have that done by around February 13th of next month. So any other additions from other folks, please?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, Craig, is also the discussion related to the overall city's budget challenge and a deficit related to our general fund, and how we're all proposing some strategies, reductions in the general fund, and how that impacts decisions on the levy. It makes it a bit more complicated for council. Makes it complicated for us, really, as well. But that's also a variable in the middle of it all. So that's what I would add, and that's something that needs to be sorted out. And timing wise, makes it a challenge for having a budget for FY24 come in April, but have a vote on a levy come in May. So I got that.
Matt or Ben, any further thoughts? All right, Carolyn, I guess that was a quick update on the levy renewal process.
Very efficient. Thank you. Kelly, can I kick it to you to talk about advisory board vacancies?
Yeah, let's see, we have 2 vacancies right now. The vacancies that were left open by Dr. Kincaid and Richard Mayer. So we do have those two. We also, you know, asked for a 2-year commitment from all of you, and we realize it's past 2 years. But we'd love to have you stay on. So wanted to kind of see, you know, publicly or privately, your interest in staying on with us. You have a lot of a good knowledge base, and you've been here from the beginning, and that's, you know, really, really valuable. But we also want to talk about how we might be able to fill these two open positions on the board. If people have ideas, you know, how should we proceed in filling those positions? Do people want to make some recommendations that we can kind of vet via email, or people can have conversations with them? So kind of kicking it open to all of you.
Kelly, I'll just throw out a few names.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
As potential, I just think of, just from experience on the Eugene Parks Foundation, previous board members. I don't know if you'd be interested, but not active with the foundation board anymore. So Art Farley, Chris Pryor, Galen Carpenter are all three names that kind of came to mind to me. And then a representative from the Eugene Parks Foundation might not be bad. I know Ariel's busy, so I don't know if I'd ask him, but like maybe a Linda Wheatley would.
And I was thinking about Claire Surratt. Is she still on the Parks Foundation?
Yeah, she is, but she's just busy. So
She might be interested.
might be able to get it. I mean, the good thing about this is relatively low commitment compared to that.
Mhm.
So those are some names I think worth considering.
Your report mentioned that there was the advisory committee of Black residents that were brought in for the Maddie Reynolds and MLK. So if they showed up for that, they might be willing to show up for this.
Yeah. There's a great group there that we could put the word out to. Good suggestion. Mhm.
Any other ideas? Okay, if you think of something, just feel free to email me. If you think of somebody, feel free to email me. And then,
Oh, one more thing, Kelly, I'm sorry. Depending on when this goes out and when the positions need to be filled, why not give it a plug in the report?
yeah,
In the section where, you know, it says advisory, I mean, be like interested. Here's a link. So
yeah.
that's if it aligns. That's a great opportunity to get it out in front of thousands.
Mhm. That's a good point. I don't know, Craig, Craig or Craig have any thoughts about next steps for that, for vetting these names and following up with folks? I mean, I'm happy to follow up with folks and ask them if they're interested and kind of explain what the commitment's like, and then let you know who might be interested for the two, or.
Yeah, I think once we have a list of names, and we'll want to sit down and chat with, you know, with Matt and Ben and others, and then kind of talk about who is still available, and you know, hopefully get some folks on as soon as possible, sooner than later. But once you have that list of names, if you could send it over to us, that'd be great. And we've been working on our own list as well.
And I'll just mention, since Whitney's microphone isn't working, that in the chat, she also talked about increased diversity and a community leader from our Spanish speaking community, reflecting all user groups. Thank you. And then, you know, I am wondering what the best way is to kind of hear from our existing board members, you know, if you're willing to commit to the future, and if that could be like an email or however you want to do that. I think it would just be good to hear from you.
I think the question that I would have is you said we were past our, 2-year. What are we signing up for again, right? Is it another 2 years? Is it 3+? I think having that would be, helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question, kind of like, what's the start and end dates? I have no idea where we're at on that.
I think it would probably be an additional 2 years. 2 years, just kidding. I think we can try to like mean it this time, like, so through FY24.
Caroline, I think one thing that would be good for us to check in on internally too is whether or not we set it up so there's overlap. So that not everyone, has the same end date, and it's staggered a little bit in membership, which always seems to be helpful, especially when you have new members coming on. So we can talk about that.
Yeah. Good point. Maybe we will follow up to all of you with an email that specifies the duration of the commitment, and you can reply to that. How does that sound? Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. And so we have time for some project updates. Craig Smith, Jeff Perry, is Jeff still here? Do you guys have any? Oh, there you are, Jeff. Hi. Do you have any updates you'd like to give?
Go ahead, Jeff, if you want to do the rest of what is.
I really don't have any updates. Our projects are completed and, just finishing at least the big 3 projects, and the first one punch list items as usual, and we're starting up for that for the facility. Anything else to add?
You sounded a little muffled, Jeff. I don't know if everybody caught that, but it's very muffled. So essentially all 3 recreation major renovations are complete. And people are in the buildings enjoying them, and we got a few loose ends to tie up with finishing the project. So I'll just reflect back on Jeff and his team again, that during the time of the pandemic and all the issues associated with that, we got 3 great projects completed. Mostly within the budget we projected. We moved around things, but it was a phenomenal job by him and his team to get those done. So we look forward to the next ones. And then the recreation staff, I guess what I would say moving forward is we're closing in on working with parks collaboratively on the Golden Gardens project. But coming up in the master planning component of the Golden Gardens project is finally at our doorstep. And I'm really forward to that and its impact on the community. I don't know if you're going to cover that in other projects, Carolyn, but that's where a lot of my focus is. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, just to build on that, we have a number of projects that are in the planning process right now. We have Maddie Reynolds and Martin Luther King Jr. Park, which we're kind of closing in on a final design on all of those, which is really exciting. And I don't remember if the last time we talked, if we told you about the property that we were able to acquire adjacent to Maddie Reynolds Park. So Maddie Reynolds Park is about a 5.25 acre park site. And we, one of the projects on the bond was to look for land for a community center and pool in that southwest district, Churchill neighborhood. And we've been looking for years and years and years. And we were kind of thinking that it would be on some land that was currently owned by the school district. But the school district kind of cooled their heels a little bit on that partnership, I guess is the way to put it. And we started taking another look around, and there was some property adjacent or kind of across the street from Maddie Reynolds Park, another 7.5 acres, I think, which we bought in October, I think it was September, October. And that with the intention of becoming a future site for a community center and pool for that neighborhood. So it's just awesome because A, we got the land, and B, it's like connected to another park site that we really want to build up is as a significant asset and resource for that area. So that's a really good news story. And it came together really quickly. And so that's an update I wanted to give. Of course, when we build that is a ways down the road. That's a conversation for another bond, basically. But great motivation for another bond. And then projects that are currently under construction, Stryker Field in Northeast. We had to kind of overwinter that because we expanded the scope, the construction scope. And so it's kind of just on hold right now during the wet season, but we will be starting up again, or the contractor will be starting up again in the spring, and it will be open kind of, we think, late spring, early summer, likely for use. So that will be exciting. And then this coming construction season, this coming summer, we'll break ground on Santa Clara Community Park. That's phase 1. So that has a big master plan, and we are constructing phase 1 of that project beginning this year. The Delta Ponds Loop Trail construction is finally getting started this year, which is kind of creating a bridge over the slough, which will create a 1-mile looped trail there. And then the other one we're anticipating this summer is lighting along the Fern Ridge Path. That is a really important, not only recreational path, but commuter path for folks living in West Eugene. And there are significant portions of that path that currently don't have lighting. And so this project will close all those gaps. And so the entire path will be lit, which will help with some of the safety concerns that we have along that path as well. So those are kind of the big ones, in addition to the Golden Gardens project, where that's a big project because it's master planning for the entire 240-acre site, which includes 3 components: a sports complex, a neighborhood park amenity, as well as significant natural resources that we want to protect and preserve. So those 3 elements are all kind of what's proposed for that site, and kind of getting the balance right and working through all that with the community is our next stop, with our first meeting coming up on January 24th at Willamette High School at 5:30 p.m. Did you all get an invitation to that by any chance?
I don't think so.
Okay, we'll forward one your way.
Just a quick question. I guess not necessarily relevant to this group, but are you guys still planning on fields out there, baseball fields, that type of stuff? Courts, everything kind of?
Sports complex, yep.
Yep.
Significant sports complex. So what was it, 12 to 15 fields, Craig?
10 baseball diamonds in 2 different 5 circles, and then 6 rectangle fields for multi-sports. And maybe a pickleball court or 2.
Very exciting.
Any other questions about projects? Or anything else on your mind? Well, as always, we really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and your guidance. And we'll be updating our draft report and finalizing that. And I will be sending you a draft letter in the next probably 2 days. So with that, oh, and then we'll also be sending you an email about whether or not you're interested in re-upping with us. And so anything else, anyone? Are we good?
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate
Yeah.
your time.
Thanks for all your hard work, everyone. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Well
Happy
done.
New
Thanks, guys.
Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.